Yes, yes, yes. I will trust you, God, always. Thank you, Soul 21, for that powerful selection. It always feels good every time every time I hear that song. I always remember where I was in mind as that song came through me, and I am so grateful to be able to hear it today. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello again. It is so good to be here with each and every one of you, and I don't want to use any other time with hellos, but I want to get into today's sermon. So first, let's talk about where we began last week with the message, let's get intentional. And I shared in that message last week, so many people are talking loud and creating nothing. They're talking about a lot of things that they want to be, do, or have someday, but they're not being intentional about it. It's not unequivocal. It's not unambiguous. It's a someday, a one day, and it's a hoping and it's a wishing. I also talked about the fact that media outlets and other experts are already forecasting 2022, and most people are hearing that and saying, oh, I guess this is what 2022 is going to look like. But of course, you are not most people. And so what I encourage you to do is to define your year. Right? What is the definition of 2022 for you? Do not take the definition of what others are saying, even if it seems nice, right? And so I gave you an exercise to create your ideal scene, doing as Stephen Covey says, beginning with the end in mind. It's December 31st, and you've had a most wonderful year. What does that year look like? And you write out the scene. And I encourage you to go back to that sermon if you missed it, because you want to get that exercise and you want to begin to start that exercise and get intentional about your year. And so to begin today's sermon, I want to share a poem with you. It's a poem by Nellie Olmsted Lincoln. Oh, the winds of God are blowing, so keep your sails unfurled. And the winds of God will take you to safe harbors of the world. Forever they're in motion to take you where you will, forever full of power if there are sails to fill. But they cannot do their duty if you should reef your sail. The winds would still be blowing, but they blow to no avail. So if upon your voyage becalmed your ship or slow, oh, blame it not to winds of God, he doth not wish it so. So take the helm, be master, unfurling sails your part, and the winds of God will take you to the harbor of your heart. Now, I just gave you a brief review of what the Let's Get Intentional sermon was all about. And of course, if you started or completed last week's writing exercise, you are already light years ahead of most people, because most people never actually define their year. Right. And you may be thinking, well, but people, they do New Year's resolutions and people, write down goals and things. But writing down New Year's resolutions is not defining your year. I did some research, and I was looking at sort of the popular New Year's resolutions, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And there's even a breakdown of the top New Year's resolutions by state here in the United States. And it's always the same stuff, right? Lose weight, save money, start exercising or exercise routine, changing your eating in some way, getting a new job, being more productive, and getting more sleep, right? 2019, this is just as far back as I went, 2020 and 2021, it's the same category of things. But if you think about it, and we know this as New Year's resolutions are created, built into most New Year's resolutions is shame and guilt. Right? People want to lose weight. Oh, I feel terrible, or I look terrible. So that's why I want to make this New Year's resolution. I spent too much money for the holidays, and so I need to save money. Right? I don't feel good. I need to move differently. I hate my job. I want to get a new job. I'm not doing enough. I see other people doing all of these things. Maybe I'm not productive enough. Right? Comparison is the thief of joy, of course. I need to get more sleep. And again, most of these resolutions are really rooted in what people think they should be doing. They're rooted in comparison. And that, of course, then leads to shame and leads to guilt. And that's also then why most people don't actually achieve their resolutions, right? Because shame and guilt, it's not motivating, right? It's definitely not inspiring, because that which is inspiring comes from within. It comes from the divine within us, and it doesn't shame or guilt us. And also what it's doing, it's starting with the problem in mind instead of the desired result. And that's why last week's exercise is so beautiful and so important, to begin with the end in mind. What is your desired result? You've heard Pastor Yolanda talk about this so many times, and it's part of what we use as our exercise coming into this year. Who do you want to be? That's the desired result. And we also recognize that we, as Abraham Hicks loves to say, we are solution finders, not problem solvers. And so if you understand that you're a solution finder, then you're going to think about your year in a different way. You're going to define your year in a different way. You're no longer going to outline the problems that you need to solve. Weight is not a problem, right? Money is not a problem. The movement of your body is not a problem. Your job is not a problem. Your productivity is not a problem, or your lack of sleep, right? But you now are looking for solutions to sleep effectively and be well rested, right? Solutions to be productive, right? Solutions to be happy in your job, etc. So we are solution finders, not problem solvers. And as I talked about earlier, this idea that people are already forecasting the year, but it's also even true for New Year's resolutions. I found this so interesting. There's an article in the New York Post this recently, and in Good Housekeeping. In the New York Post, the title of the article is "The 50 Best 2022 New Year's Resolutions and How to Achieve Them." And in Good Housekeeping, it's 60 achievable New Year's resolutions for happier and healthier living. And I find this interesting because someone is telling you, first, what is achievable, right? Here's 50 things that you can do that we believe. We don't know who this person is, what their life is like, what they understand about how life works, and that life is actually for us and what's possible. We don't know if they're happy or sad in their own life, but they're writing something telling you, here are the 50 resolutions, best resolutions for you and how to achieve them. And somebody over at Good Housekeeping is giving you 60 achievable New Year's resolutions for what they define as healthier and happier living. Someone is telling you what is achievable and defining what healthier and happier living looks like for you. And so, again, there are probably millions of people that will read these articles, right, and be guided by what someone else is saying, and not defining their own year, not defining their own future, not defining their own experience. And so if, and I literally have that written in caps here in my notes, if you have begun to get intentional about 2022 and are creating your ideal scene as given last week, and you're answering the questions, what kind of life do I have ideally? What do I do? What do I have? What have I accomplished? What kind of person am I? Where do I live? What does a typical day look like? Right? If you're answering those questions, then you're actually beginning what Nellie Olmsted Lincoln is inviting us to do. You have unfurled your sails. And let's go back to those first two stanzas. Oh, the winds of God are blowing. So keep your sails unfurled, and the winds of God will take you to safe harbors of the world. Forever they're in motion to take you where you will, forever full of power if there are sails to fill. So let's be clear. While you may be writing your ideal scene, while you may be the one that's defining your new year, it is not by your might, by your power, your intelligence, your skill, your talent, your good looks, your charm, or any of your abilities that you will have the year that you have defined and desire. I'm going to say that again. While you may be the one writing the ideal scene, it is not by your might, your power, your intelligence, your skill, your talent, your good looks, your charm, or abilities that you will have the year that you have defined and desire. We read it in that first stanza where she says, the winds of God will take you to safe harbors of the world. And so what we need to do, where our might, our power, our intelligence comes in, is the unfurling. But it's so important that we hear this, right? And that these winds are forever in motion. And I love that she says, forever full of power, if there are sails to fill. And so as we unfurl and raise our sails, now there is a power, there is a presence, there is a thing that we choose to call Mother, Father, God that works equally for all and is easily available to all, full of power, simply waiting for sails to fill. And so as we recognize this truth that it is not by our might and our power, our talent, our intelligence, our abilities that we will have the year that we have defined and desire, I want us to start using a new phrase in 2022. So often we see people affirming and celebrating, saying, I manifested that. And that's stage 2 living, if you look at the stages of spiritual consciousness. And of course, we often talk about wanting to get you to live from and think from stage 3, the vessel stage. It is not I, but it is God within me that does the work. And so from that vantage point, what if we begin to say and make our phrase for 2022 as all the good begins to come forth in our lives, I co-created that. I co-created that, and there's probably going to be a t-shirt coming as I think about it. Because what this will do, and I know this to be true, in my writing exercise, daily writing, inspired by exercise from Abraham Hicks, I would write Creator's Workshop at the top. And I made a change, and I simply just changed that to Co-Creators Workshop, because I wanted to make sure that nowhere in my mind was I deceiving myself into thinking that it is the power of me and my pen and my ability to write that was causing any of the good, right? I love that, Abraham Hicks uses the term co-creator, that you're a co-creator and a co-creation. But I think it's very important that we get intentional about it in 2022, because otherwise, as things begin to unfold, we're going to think that it's by our might and our power, and that runs out. Right. I love how Nellie Olmsted Lincoln writes here is that the winds of God are forever in motion to take you where you will, forever full of power. Right. We are not forever in motion and individually full of power, but it is the power of God within us. I co-created that. And that's important because if you take this metaphor, if you think about how silly it would be if we anthropomorphized a boat and the sails of a boat specifically, it would be silly if the sails of the boat thought that it was the reason that the boat got from point A to B. We all know that that's impossible, right? That without winds, the boat would just sit still. It wouldn't matter how beautiful the sails were. It wouldn't matter how large the sails were. It wouldn't matter how expansive the sails were. It would be powerless without the winds. Yes, we know that. But again, so often we get confused. And again, this is the stage 2 consciousness, the manifestor consciousness, the manipulator consciousness, and where we get stuck there, where it has an end, is we can think and deceive ourselves into thinking that it's our power, it's our might, it's our intelligence, it's our knowing, it's how many books we've read, how many teachers we've studied with, how many tools we know, right? How many that we've memorized the 5 steps of affirmative prayer. It has nothing to do with that. The winds of God is the power. And so this is a mistake that so many people make when they use the law of attraction instead of learning to work with the law, which of course the law of attraction is just an expression of the law. And when I say the law, what am I talking about? The law, that's what the winds of God, that's the wind of God. It is that something that is always working. It is always available. It is no respecter of persons. It is impersonal, and it works with mechanical accuracy, as Ernest Holmes teaches us. And I love that, again, as we think about the wind. The wind is available. Anybody that puts up a sail, unfurls their sails, the winds are going to be available to you. It doesn't care what kind of mistakes you made 5 years ago. It's not worried. It's not testing you for your worthiness, right? It's not trying to give you lessons. It's simple. You got to sail up. The winds are going to start pushing your vessel across the waters. It's that simple. It's a beautiful metaphor for the truth of who and what God is, right? And for anyone watching or listening today, that you may have been given another definition of God, another picture of God. This is why co-creating with God is so important, just in the way that the sail works with the wind, right? And co-creates the experience of moving this boat across the waters. So that is the truth of your experience with God. You're not waiting for approval from God. You don't have to do anything special for God to now endow you with holy and sacred opportunities and abilities. None of that is necessary. What is necessary is for you to unfurl your sails. And the winds do what wind always does. And so then, as we are understanding that we must unfurl our sails, it's interesting because Lincoln here, she writes, keep your sails unfurled. In that first stanza, oh, the winds of God are blowing. So keep your sails unfurled, and the winds of God will take you to safe harbors of the world. Right? And I love that because as you see, the title of this message is Unfurl Your Sails. But I love that she's starting with the assumption that you've done that already, right? Because you recognize that this wind exists. You recognize that God exists. You recognize that this law exists. You recognize that there are eternal universal laws that are in operation, and we can work with them or we can work against them. As Ernest Holmes writes, it can be your taskmaster or it can be your servant. Right? It can be either or. So she's already starting from that assumption that we understand that and we put our sails up. But she's admonishing us to keep our sails, keep your sails unfurled. If you do that, then the winds of God will take you to the safe harbors of the world. So how do we do that? How do we keep our sails unfurled? Well, this is why the second part of the exercise from last week becomes important, because what you must make a commitment to do, if you've written out your ideal scene, that's sort of like building the boat, right? And deciding you're going to be the captain of the boat, right? And you put up the sail. But what do you have to do? You have to read it morning, noon, and evening. Put yourself on a schedule. Do whatever's necessary. But you have to continue to read this. You have to continue to remind and remember that you are co-creating this experience with God, with the all that is. What this also then is about, and it's why we use the song today, I Will Trust You. This is about trust and surrender and allowing. Think about it. What does the sail have to do? The sail is surrendered to the wind, right? And the sail is trusting that if I'm up here, the wind is going to do its work magnificently, beautifully, elegantly, efficiently, and deliberately, right? And on time, right? All of those things. Same thing. As you are, if you think about it, the captain of the ship, yes, you guide the ship and unfurl the sails to make use of the wind, but even you as the captain of the ship, you must live in surrender to the wind, right? Because, the winds may not be blowing as strong, or all of these kinds of things, but you recognize that wind is, or you move where you move your sails to capture from which direction the wind is blowing, right? You're not just going to keep your sail turned one way and it can't catch the wind. You turn it another way and now you can catch the wind. And as I'm saying that word catch, again, I encourage you all to join us for the visioning session, right? This is what visioning is about. We're unfurling our sails and catching the wind of God, catching that movement, catching those grand ideas, catching those God ideas, catching those ideas that are greater, wider than our individual imagination. And so this is also then where your daily spiritual practice becomes important. Why? Because just as I said, as the captain of the ship has to understand something about the wind and know how to move the sails and when to put the sails up because there's good wind, and turning it, whether the winds are coming from the east or the west, etc. Our daily spiritual practice, what meditation is doing, we are attuning ourselves to the frequency of the divine, which what does that do? As we tune ourselves to the frequency of the divine, as we go within each and every day for just 5 minutes, right? Each and every day we go within and we're tapping into that greater part of ourselves. We're tapping into that wider part of ourselves. We're tapping into and connecting to that thing that's called the unified field. What happens is we come out and we're still anchored. We're still connected to that space. And so now we're living life tethered. And if we're living life tethered, then what that allows us to do as we become more attuned through daily, consistent, disciplined meditation, right? This is, I'm not talking to y'all, to the here and there meditators, right? When times get tough and stressful, then I start meditating. I'm not talking to y'all, right? Let's get on a schedule, right? This is what we're talking about, every day meditating. When we do that, then what it allows us to do is to heed the signs, the directions, and the guidance as we are living the divine unfolding of our year. Excuse me, we're going to talk a little bit more about it next week and probably the New Year's Eve message as well. But the next part of this is learning how to heed what's happening, because you're now being given guidance. You're now being given direction, right? There's a there's a vantage point, which is God's vantage point, that can see clearly how to move you around obstacles and raise up those things that are standing in the way of what it is that you want, and support you in healing those things, and support you in transforming and overcoming and breaking through those things. And so daily meditation is what supports us in doing that. Also our daily reading something that's reminding us about the wind and the power of the wind, and that wind is available, right? And you're never alone. This is why we read something that is beneficial and inspirational, something like the Daily Word or 365 Science of Mind, or some other daily reading that's reinforcing the truth about the wind, God itself, reinforcing the truth about the law, reinforcing the truth of your worthiness, reinforcing the truth that of this truth that I said to you, that it is always available, that is no respecter of persons, that you are worthy, you were born worthy, you live worthy, you will leave worthy, and it works with mechanical accuracy, just as the wind works with mechanical accuracy for the sails of a sailboat. Now, you remember I said earlier, you're not most people, right? Most people do not even begin to get intentional about their year. At best, they write resolutions, but we just talked about resolutions are actually, they're rooted in shame and guilt. They're rooted in shoulds. They're rooted in comparison. They're rooted in problem solving instead of solution finding. And so that's why we see that that energy is not beneficial. It's I talk about sometimes cotton candy spirituality, right? And that's what it's like. It's not beneficial. It may give you a quick little burst of energy, and it may even taste good, but it dissolves quickly, and you would crash if you continue to just try to be motivated by cotton candy. And so it is with the way that these resolutions. And so you're not most people, which means something very important. There's no blame game involved here. Now let's look back at the next stanza in this poem, where Olmsted Lincoln writes, "So if upon your voyage be calmed your ship or slow, oh, blame it not to winds of God, he doth not wish it so." Right? Now, this is what happens and can happen sometimes. We can get stuck in the creation process and we think, oh, God's mad at me. We get stuck in the unfolding of the creation process because it is a process, and we're judging ourselves. As I'd love to say, you're just in a chapter of the story. So you in chapter 3 of a 30-chapter book, and you're comparing yourself and blaming yourself and saying, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong? And so your ship may be calmed. It may have stopped, or it may just slow down. Oh, but blame it not to winds of God. He doth not wish it so. And so I have to say this. This probably should have been a disclaimer last week or at the outset of this sermon, that you're now responsible for this information, right? As I said, you're not most people, right? Something brought you to this message. Something brought you to this information. And so you cannot live 2022 in the same way that others, right? Because you know that you are a co-creator, right? You know that you can define your year, right? You know that you have the power and possibility to be, do, or have what you'd like. So you can't live in the blame game like the rest of the world. There are no villains in your story. And what do I mean by that? Some unwanted things may show up, but we understand and know how to deal with unwanted things, right? We understand and know, as I quote often from the prayer chest, the ideas of prayer, that prayer is answered when you listen, prayer is answered through you, and prayer is answered when you welcome everything in. There are no villains in your story, because you understand what's going on. You understand this process of unfurling our sails, and you understand that you understand this power that's available to you. You understand that it's impersonal, that it's no respecter of persons. It works for everyone equally, just as we know in nature, the winds blow for everyone equally. The sun shines for everyone equally. So you can't move through your year in the way that some other people who aren't aware of this, and it is done unto us as we believe. And so if you embrace these beliefs, then you can no longer live from that vantage point. You know that you are a co-creator. You know that you can define your year. And so you're now responsible for this information. To whom much is given, much is required. And that's what this means, right? Just, having information is wonderful, and having, large libraries and having read all of these books is wonderful. But to whom much is given, if you know this, if you're embracing this, if you've begun to write your ideal scene, or you're choosing to do it as a result of today's sermon, there's now a responsibility. And there's now a way that you have to live that doesn't allow you to see the circumstances or people in your life as villains. What did we say earlier? The phrase we want to start using? I co-created that. This is why I love that beautiful lesson in A Course in Miracles. I am never upset for the reason I think. So I recognize that I can be upset and I'll have emotions, and somebody may do something or say something that disappoints me. But I got to tap into okay, where are my fingerprints on this, right? Not putting all the blame on myself or making myself feel bad, but from an empowered place. Just as the captain of a ship, if her ship was just sitting idly in the water or moving slower, right, she wouldn't go into a blame game, and she wouldn't curse the sky, oh, cursed winds, oh, cursed nature. No, she would say, okay, wait, I put my sail down. I need to put it. I thought the sails were up. I didn't put them up, right? There's the first, oh, I can put my sails. Oh, my sails aren't turned in the right direction. Let me turn my sail. And so that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. It's that energy. There's no need to shame yourself or guilt yourself or blame yourself. But if becalmed your ship or slow, oh, blame it not on the winds of God. He doth not wish it so. And then we have the last stanza of this poem, which I love. So take the helm, be master. Unfurling sails, your part, and the winds of God will take you to the harbor of your heart. And so again, built into this poem is the co-creative process. Take the helm, be master. Endeavor to live the life that you've imagined. The series we just finished not too long ago, right? Write out your ideal scene. Begin with the end in mind. You imagining, I have had the most amazing, most wonderful year, and begin to write about it. What are the things that you would be, do, or have? How would you be living? What type of person would you be? Take the helm, be master. Unfurling sails, your part. And the winds of God will take you to the harbor of your heart, your part. meaning that there's a partnership going on. We're in partnership with the all that is. We're in partnership with God. We're in partnership with the universe. That's so important because, again, still folks that claim to be spiritual and have left certain theologies, they talk about the universe as though the universe is doing something for them instead of recognizing that we're co-creating with the universe. We're doing our part. We're in partnership. And our elder brother Jesus demonstrated this so incredibly clearly, and it keeps getting missed. Right? This is why he called God Father. For him, that was an expression of partnership. People weren't calling God Father. If you look in Jewish tradition, right, preceding this wisdom that comes through Jesus, you're not hearing that kind of connection. And that was his way of demonstrating partnership. I'm doing my part. He also went on to say, apart from him, apart from this thing that we call God, I can do nothing. Think about a sailboat or even the captain. Apart from the winds, the boat can do nothing. The boat needs the winds to move forward. So take the helm, be master, unfurling sails, your part. And the winds of God will take you to the harbor of your heart. And that last line, as I read that and heard that, the harbor of your heart, it reminds me of a very familiar psalm, Psalms 37:4. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So take delight in your year. Take delight in the life that you are imagining. Take delight in the year that you are defining. And keep your sails unfurled. With that, I say amen, ashe, and so it is. Yes, yes.